see you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for being here tonight. You know, I look forward to these town halls all year. It's a tradition that we've gotten into in every January to get out and engage in this exercise in democracy. And for me, one of the best things is, yes, being able to engage directly with all of you and hear questions, concerns, thoughts about where we're going and have robust exchanges. But one of the best things about this for me is that you all keep showing up. You choose to take a Wednesday evening, a random Wednesday evening where there's lots of things to do, and come out to engage with our democracy, to share some of your questions and concerns. And many of you have questions here. Some of you are just glad to be part of this, to watch this conversation about how we're going to build a better country, a better world, how we all come together to decide what our future can look like. And for me, as the person you've elected to serve you as Prime Minister at this particular moment, to share some of my thinking, to share some of my perspectives on the issues and concerns that you're facing. This is an excellent exercise for me because I get to directly hear from all of you and understand there's going to be a wide range of views, of perspectives, of issues brought up. But it's also a moment for you to hear a full diversity of ranges and perspectives. I have no doubt in here that there are some folks who disagree with each other and disagree with me quite strongly on different issues, and I'm looking forward to hearing all that. The one thing I'm going to ask, and I think we can all agree, is that we want to be respectful of each other in this room. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask a question, to hear the answers, and to be part of something that, quite frankly, doesn't happen enough in politics. One of the challenges we face in our world is that whether it's social media or the various approaches to news and opinions that we have around us all the time, is it becomes easier and easier to only follow or reach out to news sources that you already agree with, or be surrounded with circles of friends who share the same opinions and not necessarily hearing a broad range of opinions. And one of the things that happens when you create a community event like this, in which none of you were vetted, we didn't check your Facebook posts to see who you might have supported or voted for in the past or what your issues are. You just had to show up and want to be part of this evening to be able to come and engage in this opportunity. So for me, it's an extraordinarily great privilege to be able to be here. And it's also a little bit emotional because back in January of 2013, when I was running to be leader of the Liberal Party, I was here at Thompson Rivers University in a somewhat smaller room than this one, doing a town hall very similar to this, where I was sharing my hopes and my quest to become leader of the Liberal Party and then eventually Prime Minister. But the substance of the conversation and the kinds of exchanges we need to have can and should continue. And politicians in general should be willing to engage with and answer questions from, in thoughtful ways, from a broad range of citizens wherever they go across the country. And the fact that you're all part of this tonight is something for which I am deeply grateful. Je veux souligner aussi qu'on a de la traduction simultanée. Vous avez la capacité de poser vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. You can ask your questions in either official language, and I will answer in the official language that is asked. And we also have sign language interpretation for folks who want to make sure that this event is fully accessible. With that, I'm just going to go around the room and pick questions at random, and we will try and see how this goes. So starting with the back section up there, does someone have a question for me? You, sir. Yes. First one to put up his hand. Yes, in the gray sweater right there. Stand up.
Let's go, Matthew. Can you hear me? Is this Chin? Yeah, Chin. Okay. What's your favorite part about your day? What makes you happy? I'm sorry to start off, but I just want to know what's your favorite part about the day.
Really depends on the day. My favorite part of this day is the beginning of the town hall. We'll see if the end of the town hall is as happy for me as the beginning of the town hall. But any opportunity to engage with people is a really good thing. For me, on an average day, my favorite part of the day is when my 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old in a couple of weeks, runs into our room and jumps into bed to snuggle with us as we're waking up at around 6:30 or 7 in the morning. That's pretty much the best part of my day.
Thank you so much.
When it happens. Thank you for that question. You, ma'am, in the back. Yes, standing up. Yep, sorry, right back.
I totally concur about the 4-year-old jumping into bed with you. I have a grandson who's 4. So I'm going to take it a little deeper. For that 4-year-old that we all love, I'm having a crisis of the soul. I'm 65, and I am struggling with what I'm going to use my inherited money from my parents for investments, what I'm going to do about what I'm doing every single day to make sure that that 4-year-old even has a future. I'm having that crisis of the soul, as I'm sure many of us are. So how can we square what we're doing when we actually know how serious it is? And I was on the bus with David Suzuki yesterday in Vancouver, and we had a little chat, and I just have to say he's pretty discouraged. And yeah, that really hurt me. I mean, he's in his 80s, and he was here in the 60s when I was a student at TRU. He was talking to us about the very same things. So my question, now that I've set up the context, is I want to invest. I'm 65. I'm lucky if I have 20 years left. I want to invest in the green, sustainable things that I can do. I don't want to do harm. My parents are doctors and nurses. It's do no harm. So I'm struggling. I'm a teacher. I'm really struggling. So I want to get some really practical solutions that we all know are going to be really hard for us. Got any good ideas? And I just can't invest in fossil fuels. I can't.
Well, thank you for your question and your commitment to the future. I mean, obviously, that is how we would want everyone to think, how to leave a better world behind, how to make sure that our kids and our grandkids have all the opportunities we had and even more. And our capacity to do that really depends on the choices we make as individuals, but even more so as communities, as a society, as a country, and as a world. Fortunately, the way you make it sound is that there's a choice to be made between investing to benefit and investing to make money, or investing in the right kinds of things. But what we're beginning to see is the world is shifting towards cleaner, more efficient, better ways of doing things. Consumers are getting a lot smarter about the choices we make in terms of how this will impact on the environment, how this will impact communities around the world when we buy this product or that product. People are being much more thoughtful about their own behaviors, their own life choices, their own investments, and there are lots of opportunities to do the kinds of things that are pushing us towards the future. We know the future is going to be different. We know we need to make shifts towards a cleaner economy. We know we need to create jobs that are going to be there a long time into the future for kids and grandkids in ways that we don't yet know what those jobs are going to be. So there is no question we are at a time of pivotal change. And the first and most important thing that you've already demonstrated is that you understand that you do have a tremendous amount of control and impact on the world that we're building ahead of us, as we all do. So what you can be doing, what I can be doing, what we are doing as a country, is investing in that clean energy transition, investing in protecting more of our natural environment. We're moving forward on putting a price on pollution to make sure that pollution isn't free anymore. That's something you guys know in BC has led to economic growth at the same time as it has reduced your carbon footprint. These are things that we need to be thoughtful about as we do, but it's not just about environmental thinking, it's also about longer-term thinking, thinking about the impact of our choices for the next generation. And I can't tell you exactly what you need to do with your savings or how you can engage in volunteer work or in continuing to teach or in participating in your community's life in ways that are going to push us in the right direction. But I know that the more you reflect on it, the more you participate in thoughtful ways to move forward, there are tremendous causes for optimism. And that's probably where I disagree with David Suzuki, and I have tremendous respect for him. I've had amazing conversations with him over the course of my life. He and I tend to disagree quite vehemently recently on a number of things. But his commitment to building a better world is undeniable. I'm just a little more optimistic than he is. Because everywhere I go, I have conversations with people who are excited about the challenges we're facing and our capacity to overcome them. Our capacity to create these solutions that are going to carry us through, our capacity to learn from each other and to lean on each other and to build a better world. And quite frankly, having opportunities to listen to each other, learn from each other, to grow together in thoughtful ways is at the heart of what we must be doing as a society of tremendous diverse views and perspectives, but a shared desire to see our kids grow up with good jobs, in a clean environment, and positive, optimistic outlooks for the future. Thank you for your question. Question from down here. You in the yellow shirt.
It's a question about being a man. Have you ever laughed as an ordinary man with ecstasy since you became the Prime Minister of Canada?
Have I ever laughed?
As an ordinary man.
As an ordinary man. I think that's probably the only way I've ever laughed. You don't get put into a special category when you become Prime Minister. I try to find the humor and joy in things every day in my life. That keeps me grounded and keeps a sense of perspective in what we're doing. If you can't laugh about wonderful and absurd things that go on around you, then you lose touch with the reality we all live in.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's not one I'd gotten before. You in the red T-shirt.
Hi.
You got a fan club. This is going to be good.
It's from Walmart. So. As many people in this room, I'm an international student, and I wondered what message do you have for us, for the international students?
International students are, first of all, an extraordinary blessing to Canada and to our education system. You come here from different parts of the world, bring your stories, your experiences, and contribute to the community you're part of as you're here at TRU, as you go through your educational process. At the same time, you're learning about the things that we do well, the things that we do less well. And you can make your own decisions if you choose to return to your own country about what examples you want to bring back. And those connections we build, real, genuine people-to-people connections throughout the world, people who've experienced different things in different parts of the world and understand that for all our differences, we are all quite similar in our hopes and dreams and desires, brings the world together a little more. So if you choose to return home at the end of your studies here in Canada, you will have great stories to tell and friendships that will last a lifetime. If you choose to make your life here in Canada, as we've made easier for international students to do, because you've had experiences here, you've gotten work experience, you've gotten educational experience, you've demonstrated an ability to integrate and succeed here, you will bring the richness of your own country and your perspectives here to Canada. I think how we learn and travel and grow through experiencing different things around the world is an extraordinary richness for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this tonight. Another question. You in the black zippered shirt. Yes. Yep.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. First of all, last night I had a dream that you're going to be re-elected for 2019, so congratulations.
I thank you for the lovely thought. There's an awful lot of work to do between now and next October, and I'm planning on doing every bit of it.
All right, that being said, I just wanted to, I know it hits home for a lot of TRU students here for the Dr. David Scheffels from Slovakia. So just wondering what your stance is standing for that one. Thank you.
Yes, no, I was surprised at that situation. One of the challenges is the doctor is actually a Dutch citizen, not a Canadian citizen, so we are limited in our ability to engage directly in consular support, but I can tell you we are working very closely with the Dutch authorities to make sure that he's getting all the support that he can in the situation he's in right now. Thank you very much. Another question. You, sir. Yeah, in the glasses. Yeah, yeah. No, you keep turning back. There you go. Yes. Or you? Sorry, you, ma'am. Sorry.
Oh, no,
no. There we go. Yes. Sorry. I apologize.
Hi. I have heard it reported that something like 80% of emissions from Canada's oil and gas industry may not be regulated under the new carbon laws. And I'm just wondering if you could respond to either to that specifically or just this general feeling a lot of us have that the oil and gas industry is not being held accountable in the same way that other industries and other communities are.
Oh, great question. First of all, Canada made a commitment alongside other allies in the world that we were going to phase out the inefficient oil and gas subsidies by 2025 all around the world, and we're very much on track to doing that. On the question on the price on pollution, I think it's important to recognize that putting a price on pollution that applies right across the country, right across the economy, is a really, really important step. Just because we know one of the challenges we have with too much carbon, too much pollution in the atmosphere is because polluting into the atmosphere has been free for so long that we have too much pollution. And if you put a price on it, then you actually make it worth people's while to look for ways to reduce those emissions, to find alternatives, and to change the way their companies or their emissions profiles work in order to save money. It's basic economics, and it's going to be very effective. The challenge we have on that is we don't want regular people to be bearing the brunt of that change, which is why in the provinces where we're bringing in the federal carbon pricing backstop, we're ensuring that we're also giving families enough money to compensate for the extra costs that price on carbon will be. This doesn't apply to BC because you've already have very successful price on pollution for the past 10 years, but the rest of the country needs to catch up and do their part as well. I think what you're talking about when you mention the 80% number is the heavy emitters. There are industrial emitters in particular industries that are very trade exposed, that are competing every day with companies around the world, and we need to make sure that we are holding them to account to reduce their emissions. We need to reduce their emissions, and we need them to get them. Thank you, sir. No, sir, I'm going to work my whole way around the room. I am going to make my way a whole around the room. Sir, I'm trying to answer this woman's question, and I would very much like to be able to give her an answer. Okay, well, sir, please respect her ability to ask a question. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, I've asked you to sit down and please engage here. Please, sir. Thank you. Sorry, your question was about the 80% of emissions. We're asking large industrial emitters to actually reduce their emissions, and if they don't reduce their emissions, then they will be penalized for it. That is part of the carbon pricing plan we put forward. But a price on carbon isn't the only thing we've actually done. We've done a number of things on top of that as well, and that's exactly what we'll do. Anyway, sir, please. Thank you. Sir? Please sit down. You might enjoy it. Please sit down, sir. Well, you're more than welcome to stay. Please. Thank you. Please be respectful. Can I ask someone? Thank you for saying that. Can I ask someone else a question now? Thank you. Next question. Sorry. You in the red.
Hi. I don't have a big question like them. I just want to ask, how was your tour in India? Sorry, it's just about once in a lifetime chance, so I just want to take it.
Listen, it was...
I heard in news that it wasn't good. Is that right?
It depends how you look at it. We did a number of good things on that trip. We deepened some of the people-to-people ties that we have between Canada and India. There are many, many Canadians of Indian origin who felt that trip did bring very positive connections together. There were some challenges on that trip as well that if we had to do it again, we might not repeat. But at the same time, we had some very, very positive economic investments. We had some jobs created, and it was a trip that happened. Thank you. You near the back in the white sweatshirt. Yes. Stand up.
Okay. Hello.
Hi there.
Okay. So next to his question, I want to know about how was your trip in Japan? And also, what did you think about Prime Minister Abe?
I actually had a wonderful conversation with Prime Minister Abe just a few nights ago, where we talked about the fact that Japan is hosting the G20 this year, but also, and that I'm looking forward to going back to Japan in June for the Group of 20 nations meetings. But we also had a very good conversation about how important it is for countries to stand up for the rule of law. We talked about the current difficulties Canada is having with China, where 2 Canadian citizens have been arbitrarily detained in response to Canada, following its own rules. So there are lots of good conversations to be had with global leaders on issues like the rule of law that are really important to have. And the statements that the global community has made in support of Canada on the rule of law and some of the difficulties we're having with China in this situation was a great conversation to have had with Shinzo, and always a good conversation to have with many leaders around the world. Thank you very much. I'm going to come down here. I sort of skipped over this section here. You, ma'am. Yes.
I particularly want to thank you for spearheading the G7 when you persuaded them or helped them decide to donate $3.8 billion towards educating girls in third world countries and developing countries. And I particularly thank you for the $400 million that Canada is donating. And I think we will all agree that educating girls changes the world. But I'd like you to think about one thing. One of the barriers that stops girls in developing countries from going to school is not having adequate sanitary supplies. So when they have their period, they have to stay home. I am actually the president of the Canadian Days for Girls Association, and we make reusable, sustainable, safe sanitary supplies for girls in developing countries. And one of your aides has a kit to give you. I wasn't allowed to bring it in here, but I made sure it comes to you. I would love the opportunity to speak to someone in your government who could help get these girls these kits so that we can break these barriers.
Thank you very much for that question. And thank you for bringing up the $3.8 billion. That was money, and as much as I, would be tempted to take credit for it. I actually can't take credit for that, that money. We put together, as part of our G7 presidency, a gender advisory council that basically, instead of saying, okay, we're going to make women's equality one of the issues we're going to deal with at the G7 in sort of a silo or a particular topic for an hour, we decided that everything we do for the G7 horizontally had to have this advisory council, the Gender Equality Advisory Council, weigh in on the economics, on the oceans protection, on the development money, on the security issues. And they actually came up with, as a big priority for our G7, they were looking at the fact that there's lots of money for education out there, including education for girls. There's lots of money for humanitarian support in conflict areas, but there was a gap specifically on girls' education in conflict or failing states. And that gap that the experts noted for us became one of the big themes that we put together in the G7 so that we could get people to buy in on and make a huge difference. And there are millions of girls in very difficult areas around the world right now who will have opportunities because of the generosity of a lot of different countries and indeed the World Bank that stepped up on this. On the issue of feminine hygiene products, of support for girls, that's actually an issue that's come up in a lot of conversations I've had, and it's something that we don't talk about often enough. And whether it's debates in Parliament about the access to supports, or whether it's how we make that part of our development policy, there are a lot of really smart people engaged in it with concrete solutions, and I look forward to following up with you, or having people follow up with you afterwards. Thank you. Another question. You, sir, you wore a shirt and tie to this event, so you get a question out of that one. Not really, I
figured if I have to bring back the three-piece suit all by myself, I'm happy to do it. My question is actually twofold. The first surrounding leadership, and the way that you hold yourself out is incredibly inspiring to business people in the community. The way that you are able to continually talk to people on a baseline level, to be able to have respect for all kinds of people. As a leader, though, you face an incredible amount of scrutiny from both sides, from people who are supportive of your decisions, for people who are challenged by your decisions. What's the value proposition that you hold the most true to your soul to help keep you online?
Boy. I think one of the things that you have to be fairly comfortable with as a leader is having a reasonably strong sense of yourself and your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and be honest with yourself about them. I mean, one of the things that I got to be challenged by or helped by as a kid growing up was, because my father was Prime Minister, people already had their minds made up about me. And yes, there were some people who really didn't like me for things completely unrelated to me, just because they didn't like my father, and I had to learn to detach that from my own sense of who I was. But there were also people who really liked me because of who my father was and thought I was great, also not based on anything that was really linked to who I am or what I was. And I had to learn to detach from people's perceptions and actually try to figure out who I am myself and be comfortable in my own values and my own perspective. But the other thing I think has been useful is you can't ever be sure you are the only one with the answers, or that you have the absolute right answers. And if I'm ever in a conversation where I'm trying to convince someone who believes something completely different than I am, if I refuse to even listen to them, or refuse to let their arguments percolate and make me reflect on what they're saying, then how can I expect that they're going to be open to my arguments that also fly in the face of what they are? So I've found that actually opening myself up to listening to criticism, to listening to counter-arguments, to challenging myself constantly to refine my thinking or learn a different way of thinking or adjust, actually helps in engaging with a conversation in a positive way that actually leaves room for other people to perhaps be convinced by what I'm saying. It's not about I'm right and you're wrong and I'm not listening to you because of it. It's maybe there's a point, maybe there's something for me to learn in your stories, even if I don't think we agree on these things. That level of openness and willingness to listen to each other, while at the same time being very strongly grounded in your core values and principles, but being open to, thinking about how best to articulate those principles into concrete solutions, is, I think, something that is fairly important in leadership, particularly when we are facing organizations and communities that are increasingly diverse, not just in backgrounds or ethnicities, but in perspectives, in solutions, in outlooks, and in priorities. And being open to truly embracing a range of opinions and perspectives, I think is a really, really important piece of leadership, because that's what allows you to get the best out of everyone who serves with you. Thank you. You, sir.
Hi, sir. I'm from India and I'm an international student here. My question to you is, I have been knowing you as a person since July 2017, and since then I have been following you. I have noted few things, that in each kind of situations, you are always humble, you are always kind, and you are so generous. So how to attain such kind of attitude? And sir, one more thing. I have been praying to His Holiness since 2017 when you visited the temple in Toronto during its 10th anniversary celebrations. So sir, how do you attain such a wonderful attitude?
I get this feeling that I want to know what news sites you're reading that you come to those conclusions. I think I try to keep a positive outlook. I think I'm quick to say that I don't have all the answers to everything, but I'm also open to working really, really hard to try and figure out the best solutions with other people alongside. And I think my background as a teacher helps me understand that a lot of what we do, particularly in politics, is about process, is about learning, is about growing. It's not about having the right answers and giving them out to people. It's very much about learning from people and building the answers together. And that's very much the approach I have, and it keeps me in a positive mind frame, I guess, is the best way to put it. But there's no trick to it. It's just a positive outlook. But thank you. Yes, you in the dark sweatshirt, the long hair. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming to you.
This way. First of all, Justin Trudeau, I'd like to thank you very much for attending such an event. I'd like to thank you for being one of the rare politicians I saw since I'm an international student to go and speak with the youth. My question is more of a suggestion. I'm a blind student who have been studying journalism at TRU since 2017. And in my assignments, I've encountered few accessibility problems, and one of them was I had to attend a city council meeting. One of the problems was that the instructor told me that they give visual cues to people on who is speaking, so they can write notes. And in journalism, everything has to be factual and accurate. I can't, for example, say Kathy McLeod said, or for example, Kathy Sinclair, sorry, and for example, Dale Bass, who was the one who said the comment. So my question is, how to resolve such accessibility issues in government meeting, and where is the best place to report an accessibility issue like that, so no other person can encounter the issue the issues I encountered. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your great question. Accessibility is hugely important. I mean, everyone, at different moments in their life can face various barriers to full participation in whether it's work or political life or community experiences. And we have to, as a society, look to reduce those barriers as much as possible. We just moved forward with our Minister for Canadians with Disabilities historic accessibility legislation that is beginning to set a framework for a more accessible Canada. It's something that applies primarily to the federal government for now, but there are a lot of communities and provinces who are very interested in taking on and doing a better job of making sure that everyone can fully participate in contributing to the society that we're busy building. I know there's a lot of challenges still to come, but I thank you very much for being here and for speaking up. And there are many ways of reporting it. There's the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal that you can move forward and make a request of. But I will make sure that we follow up with you at the end of this session to give you more information on who you can reach out to, and maybe even I'll connect you with our extraordinary MP, Carla Qualtrough, who's our Minister for Disabilities, who's a former Paralympian and is an amazing person. Thank you. Okay, question. You and the toque, right there. Yeah. Here, stand up.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Sorry.
I was wondering what your thoughts were on Donald Trump saying that the wildfires in California were because of Canada's lumber prices.
Yeah. Okay. Canadians expect me to do two things in regards to Donald Trump. The first one is make sure I have a constructive relationship with the American president, because the relationship we have between Canada and the United States is extraordinarily important. $2 billion worth of goods flow across our border every given day, and we know that that is something that is a huge piece of our prosperity, and that's why having been able to secure this new NAFTA and make sure that we are still good with our most important trading partner was a really big deal. So that's the first thing, have a constructive relationship with the president. The second thing that we Canadians expect of me is to consistently stand up for Canadian values and Canadian interests with the American president, with Americans, with everyone around the world. And those are the two things that I focus on with President Trump. I try not to weigh in on various things that he says as a matter of course. I'm very much focused with what we're doing here in Canada. I can tell you that the wildfires we've experienced here in BC have been significant challenges. The extreme weather events that are cropping up with increasing frequency require a tremendous amount of coordination between various orders of government, and we have great working cooperation with the Premier of BC. I also will highlight that the continued challenges around softwood lumber is something that I keep raising with the president. As to any links between fallen logs and brush fires, I will defer to experts and scientists on that. Question. Yes, you, sir, the enthusiastic bearded fellow in gray. Hang on, there's a mic actually coming your way.
Hello, so thanks for coming to my town. And,
it's great to be back.
You're welcome for the clear sidewalks, by the way, me and this guy, and you know. But I just want a really, really quick, really funny question. It was pertaining about Donald Trump. Would it really be bad relationship advice to give you just to tell you, you know, from all of us, just push him off a cliff, we're good. Like, really?
Yeah.
I'll buy you a beer. I'm not afraid. But anyways, thank you for giving me the mic. I just wanted to get that out there. When you mentioned him.
I wasn't expecting a threat of violence against our closest ally, but You know, in politics, people have all sorts of opinions and all sorts of perspectives about who is leading at any given moment. The relationship between Canada and the United States goes far deeper than who happens to be Prime Minister and who happens to be President. And that's something we were able to demonstrate during the negotiations around the new NAFTA deal, because premiers of all different stripes, business leaders were engaging with a strong, cohesive vision of what mattered to Canada. And keeping things on a pragmatic, regular, thoughtful level, and not, you know, stooping to insults or you know, jokes, I think is an important thing that Canadians should keep in mind when dealing with the world. But I appreciate your comment. You in the striped scarf. Yes.
Hello, my name is Tilly. I come from the Statium Nation, and I come here with my prayers, and I come here with my ancestors. And today, I want to ask you, what are you going to do to stop oppressing and holding our people under your colonization? When are you going to give us our rights back? When are you going to start giving a shit about who we are as people and not seeing us just for our land?
Thank you for your question, Tilly. Canada has a long and terrible history in regards to Indigenous peoples. We have consistently failed as a country to live up to the original spirit and intent of the treaties. We have not treated Indigenous peoples as partners and stewards of this land. We have marginalized, behaved in paternalistic, colonialistic ways that has lacked respect for the First Peoples as the stewards of the land. We have much to apologize for and much to work forward on together in respect. Okay, so yesterday afternoon, I had the opportunity of sitting down in Ottawa with the leaders of self-governing and modern treaty First Nations. Nations that had made their way out from under the colonial relic that is the Indian Act. And we are working with them on full self-government. We're working with them on being able to make their own determinations about their land, about how they care for their people, how they serve their people, how they move forward in responsible ways that are their choices. And that is why we are working on two levels on this issue. Okay. I appreciate that. I'm trying to answer your sister here, Tilly, with her question. Am I allowed to answer her question, ma'am? Thank you. So, Tilly, the two streams that we're working on are, one, Indigenous services, and two, Indigenous relationships. On relationships, we know we have to get out from under this Indian Act. We need to move to a place where you are in control of your communities, control of your territories, control of your future, control of your children once again, control of your destinies that has been, through generations and centuries in Canada, taken away from you. And that is the work of, it took decades and centuries to break this relationship. It will take time to improve it, but we are making significant progress right now in self-governance, in new relationships, in support that is moving in the right direction. On the other side of things, there is a question of services. There are still far too many Indigenous communities in this country that are existing under boil water advisories, that are not having schools to go to, not getting parity in terms of the money we invest in young people in non-Indigenous communities versus Indigenous communities. No, I'm not, Tilly. I am ready to walk in partnership with you and building the future, and that was what we have been doing over the past 3 years in renewing this relationship. I can understand your impatience. Okay. If I can answer, I understand the anger and the passion that you have around this issue of protecting your land. It's absolutely to be heard. I respect that and I understand that. I also know that there are a number of Indigenous leaders who have worked with and supported that pipeline project. Now the question is, no, it is not for the federal government to decide who speaks for you. That's not my job. My job is to try and work with everyone, work with all of you to make sure that you are taking back control of your land, your future, your people, your destiny. And that partnership is what we're working on. And it's difficult. And it is difficult. That's... This is... Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for sharing that. I understand your passion and your anger. I acknowledge it. And I say to you that we will work together to resolve these issues. If there was... I can understand your impatience. I can understand your impatience. I can understand your frustration. But at the same time, I do want to talk about the Indigenous... Okay. Okay. I'm... That is... Okay. Okay. Okay, Tilly, I thank you. I thank you for what you said. I listened to what you said. I would respectfully submit that perhaps you haven't been listening to what I am saying. Okay, you haven't. Tilly, we are working. No, Tilly, I have been listening. Tilly, I'm going to have to ask you, please, we need to be respectful of everyone who came out tonight to engage in this conversation. Okay. Okay. That is not true. They have actually just removed the barricade. They did that this afternoon. That was a sign of respect right there. They've removed the barricade. This is how this is supposed to work. This is how this is supposed to work. Now, I think we're going to take a step back here. I'm going to take a step back here. 100 years ago, when the railroads were laid down, nobody checked with Indigenous peoples. Nobody checked with the people who had lived here for millennia whether or not we could throw a railroad down in a given place. That is not the way we need to do things anymore. That is not how we will continue to do things. We need to figure out a new and better way to do things. A way that is based on respect and dialogue and engagement. And that is exactly what we're working. And there's going to be turbulence along the way, which we are seeing. But we are also going to work very, very hard to get to a place of respect and trust as we do listen, as we do figure out what the best way is forward according to you and your communities. So thank you very much for your question and your bringing this forward tonight. I very much appreciate your words. Thank you. I will take another question now. You in the long blonde hair. Yes. Yes.
I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. I'd like to ask how you intend to address the wage gap.
That's an excellent question. We have done a lot of things around trying to make sure that we are getting closer to parity in a whole bunch of different ways. By bringing forward a gender-balanced cabinet, we've improved the quality of discussion and debate and analysis on things that the government does. By recognizing that reducing barriers for women to succeed in the workforce is not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing the smart thing. It's fundamentally an economic argument. When women are consistently paid 86 cents on the dollar, that is not the way to build a prosperous society and the way to value people's contributions and work. So we've moved forward this fall on proactive pay equity legislation. What pay equity is it's not just a question of the idea that two people doing the same job, one a man, one a woman, might be paid differently. That's something that mostly we have settled. The challenge is for similar types of work, if you can imagine administrative work often done by women in a particular company and more custodial or maintenance work done more by men in a company that might require similar amounts of training or responsibilities, but typically in our society, those men are paid more for work of similar value to women. And that is what we have to fix within the pay equity issue. And that's why there's a level of proactive disclosure, a level of ongoing and updating of data to make sure that we are moving in a real way around pay equity. But there's more to it than just that. We have to understand that women, even women who are fully in the workforce alongside their partners, do a disproportionately large amount of the child rearing, of home responsibilities. There are still gender roles that have been societally brought in that we have to do a better job of balancing out. That's why, for example, we're bringing in a use it or lose it second parent parental leave. So the second parent has a 5-week parental leave, in many cases the father, that if they don't take 5 weeks off from work to help raise their kids, that's 5 weeks of parental leave that the family doesn't get. So one of the things that you get as a consequence of that is when an employer is looking to hire a young man or a young woman and thinking about the fact that when they start a family, either one of them or both of them could end up or would probably end up taking time away from work. So we're actually moving towards a way where we're looking at all sorts of different barriers to ensure that we are creating greater opportunities, whether it's childcare, whether it's a Canada Child Benefit, whether it's pay equity, whether it's second parent parental leave. These are the kinds of things that are moving not just around evening things out in a moral way, but understanding that this is fundamentally an economic argument we have to make that means that everyone will be able to be contributing and succeeding to their full potential. Thank you for your question. Come around here now. You in the purple.
Hello, Justin. It's an honor to meet you. My name is Paul Athanasios. My question actually comes from the perspective from the financial market. in United States, they said they'll be raising interest rates. They also stated that the market will be slowing down. It does reflect in the stock market as well. The charts typically don't lie, but essentially what I'm concerned about is we're getting every year, essentially, anyone who's in the financial industry will get this every year. People always say that a recession is coming, a recession is coming. Every single year they do it. But in most cases, it doesn't happen. But this year is kind of getting a lot more signs that it's a little bit more accurate signs, especially in the stocks, for example, like S&P 500. It hit the 10-year support line, and it was very nervous. It was very nerve-wracking for a lot of investors. But I'm curious to know what your remedies are in the case of a recession that does come, because if you do look at it, the past 8 years since 2008, it has been overextended. Forgive me if I'm not correct, but a lot of the critics out there do say it is overextended. And when you do look at the charts, it is really like the picture of the financial market in its essence. So I just want to see what your what those remedies are in the case that we do get a financial recession, because typically there is an artificial substance that does either help reduce like the volatility of it, or you know what I mean. So, and I also want to know if it's the same processes that you've used in the previous recessions and thereon after. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. As you recognized, we've been doing fairly well in Canada over these past 3 years. We've seen some of the lowest unemployment in 40 years. You've got the lowest unemployment in history in BC right now. Canadians have confidence, and Canadians have created over 800,000 new jobs, 190,000 here in BC. Our economy is doing very, very well. But as you have said, there's always the possibility of choppy waters on the horizon. The trade conflict between the U.S. and China is likely to have ramifications that extend around the global supply chains and around the world. And we always have to be ready to know that there could be difficult times ahead. Now, one of the things that we've been focused on as a government over this past 3 years is doing the kinds of things that will make sure that not just the government is ready to respond in case we reach choppier waters in the global economy, but to make sure that Canadians and their families and their communities are ready to respond to times of difficulty. And that involves things like investing in infrastructure, whether it's public housing or public transit, investing in better roads and port infrastructure to be able to engage in global trade in ways that are resilient to economic shocks. We're making sure that Canadians have more money in their pockets and better economic prospects through job training and reskilling and the capacity, for example, to go back to school and collect EI at the same time so that you can actually get that better career path, that better job. There are all sorts of things we're doing in investing in science and research to make sure that we're figuring out ways of being more efficient, more innovative, and create economic growth. The investments we've been making in the Canadian economy are designed to give us strength and resilience through potential challenging economic times. And that is really what our focus is as a government. We've chosen to invest in Canadians, in their communities, as a way of creating sure growth for the coming years. Now, it's not just us who are in agreement with this. That bond rating agencies who judge the fiscal outlooks and the plans and the resilience and resistance to shocks in countries around the world, like Moody's and S&P, have consistently rated Canada as a AAA, at the highest rating, the lowest risk in terms of investment, because they are confident that we are on the right track in terms of investing. We have one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios. That means that the amount of debt we carry as a country as a factor of the size of the economy, we're doing extraordinarily well, and it's consistently on a downward track. But that doesn't mean we are not very aware of potential challenges on the horizon. The cyclical nature of recessions means that it's very possible that we be encountering one soon, and we're making sure that we have the resilience, not just at the government level, but throughout the Canadian economy, to be able to do well through difficult times. So thank you very much for your question. You, sir, in the green t-shirt. Yeah. Right behind you.
Hello? This is a bit of a point that my sister Tilly brought up. I'm also from the Statliam Nation, and one of the points that she brought up was related to fishing. And currently the Fraser River and many other rivers, I will assume, are slightly contaminated, and there are nearby mines that are seeping into it. And maybe 5 or so years ago, we were told that you can fish, but toxicity levels may be high amongst the fish population. So I was wondering if I could bring that up as a suggestion, or I don't know if it's being worked on yet.
It's absolutely being worked on. Thank you very much for your question. How we protect our fish stocks, how we protect our natural environment is hugely important to us. We just actually, in the most recent fiscal update, announced a $100 million BC Fish Fund to actually make sure that we are supporting the stocks in our rivers and in the Pacific Ocean, the coastal areas, to make sure that we are protecting the extraordinary resource that has provided sustenance to ecosystems here for millennia. This is a priority that we continue to make sure we're protecting our land and our water. We will continue to do it. Thank you very much. You, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Nahian, and I'm here in Canada for like 2 years, and I'm already liking this country to stay. My question is, I believe like most of the people here in this area is students. So as my wife is an international student, my question is, I have seen like 3 or 4 times difference in tuition fees as a Canadian student and the international students. There's a difference of like 3 or 4 times like international students are paying. So do you think like if you like minimize the tuition fee for the international students, you would get more scholar student and scholar people coming to Canada and work for Canada in future? Thank you so much.
It's a good question, and it's an issue that I often hear brought up by international students. The fact is, quality education is expensive. It's seriously expensive. And we do an awful lot of subsidizing education to keep tuition fees reasonably low for Canadians. For people who can come from elsewhere who haven't perhaps spent their lives, or their parents haven't spent their lives paying taxes and contributing to Canada, we feel that it is fair to charge higher tuition prices for international students than it is to pay to Canadians. It's one of those advantages you get by being a Canadian, either by birth or by naturalization, by citizenship. And I certainly hope that if you do choose to stay in Canada with your wife, when you have kids who end up coming to university, they will benefit from the good Canadian costs of post-secondary education. Yes. Oh, there we go.
So I just want to apologize in advance to everyone. I'm going to be reading a question off my phone as I follow the story of what's happening to my brothers, sisters, and elders that have welcomed me into this territory up north. I'm angered, flustered, and saddened that this is the state of our nation. And so just wanted to preface it with that and make sure I get everything that I wanted to say and asked heard by you. Since your party's focus is on economics, and given that Canada is a party to global organizations such as the WHO, UNICEF, and the UN, all of which have published countless studies as to the benefits of investing in children, such as for every $1 spent on a child, not only do you save $20 in the long term, you also gain $20 in their success. I'd like to know why your government continues to underfund children and family services on First Nations territory, and not only do you underfund it, you continue to not comply with government orders demanding that you do so. You speak so much about respecting the rule of law, especially when it comes to Wet'suwet'en. And in light of the fact that the Supreme Court has declared that they are the rightful owners and have title as hereditary chiefs to that land, why are you not abiding by the rule of law here by not funding children on First Nations? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. First of all, in regards to Jordan's principle, we have, over the past 3 years, done significant amounts at increasing the quality of service and the services offered to Indigenous children at a level of that is approaching parity for non-Indigenous kids. Now, it's still not perfect. There's still a lot more to do, but we have made significant improvements in our support for Indigenous children across the country. There are thousands of kids across this country who are going to new schools in their Indigenous communities because of investments we've made. We have removed a number of boil water advisories. We are working through to respect Jordan's principle that makes sure that kids get the services they need. And these are changes that we've made over the past 3 years. Now, I recognize that there is an awful lot more to do, but we are beginning to do it in real and meaningful ways after a long time, after generations of governments not living up to it. There is still more to do, and we are doing it together. In regards to the Wet'suwet'en, in regards to this situation further north that I know a lot of people feel very passionate about. Again, we are creating a system in which we are working to create consensus, to understand, to have people contribute and input into the processes that affect them, their people, their lands. We've gone from a place where Indigenous people were not listened to, were not consulted, were not included in the work being done, and we are doing a better job of it. We are not, I understand your impatience, I understand your frustration. I am impatient and frustrated too. But I also say that as quickly as we would want to move, if we choose to determine what the right solution is for Indigenous peoples, we're, however well-meaning we may be, compounding a mistake that has gone on forever. We need to work with you and empower you to be able to bring the right decisions forward, to be able to weigh in, to be able to care for your communities and provide the services to your people so you're not dependent on the federal government to deliver those services anymore. That is what getting out from the colonial history that we have is all about, and that is why this partnership in a real way needs to matter. This is why we work together on this. This is why we continue to engage every year regularly with the national Indigenous organizations, with the self-governing nations, our Minister of Indigenous Services, our Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations is constantly in engagement with you right across the country to try and get this reconciliation journey furthered. This is a lot of work to do, and I understand your impatience and your frustration. I also know it is something that we are working on together. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for taking my question. My question is regarding the settlement of refugees. In July 2017, a child named Marissa Shen was found dead in a public park near her home in Burnaby. Last year, police charged with murder a 28-year-old man named Ibrahim Ali, a Syrian refugee who had come to Canada 3 months before Marissa Shen was killed. In an interview you did with Maclean's, the interviewer said, quote, "A lot of people say that if it hadn't been for the surge in Syrian refugees after the 2015 election, this guy would not be here." To which you replied, "I'm not one of those people who says that." My question is, can you guarantee that Marissa Shen was not killed by a Syrian refugee who came to Canada after you were elected? And if not, what in your opinion is the acceptable number of Canadian lives lost as a result of your policies on refugees?
Told you we were going to hear from a wide range of perspectives, and I think I understand your concerns, sir, and I understand the frustration. Violent crime and what Marissa Chen's family has gone through and what the community has gone through, any violent crime, any violent murder is a terrible tragedy, and we have a judicial system, and we have a process through which to go there. But the generalizations and the danger that we get in tying things like immigration policies to incidents like this is something that I don't entirely know is helpful or useful in a diverse, pluralistic, inclusive society like ours. The safety and well-being of all Canadians is at the forefront of our responsibility as government, responsibility as a society, and we need to do everything we can to keep all our children safe. But to set up a false dichotomy that says, well, part of everything we need to do to keep Canadians safe is to keep people from a way out of this country is simply not the way we are as Canadians.